Excellency Ambassador Jan Borgesson, the European delegation head in Ethiopia. My first question is, Prime Minister Dr. Abiy Ahmed, on his inaugural speech, promised to address the gender issue and women empowerment, and now 50% of the Ethiopian cabinet occupied by women. How do you comment about this?
Well, first of all, I think Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed should be lauded for this bold step. I think it's long overdue. Just like you said, it's also attracted international attention. I think with his move, the Ethiopian Prime Minister has also put quite a few European countries to shame, because there are very few countries in Europe that have such an equal gender balance in the cabinets as Ethiopia has.
In the context of European countries and the European Commission, how do you explain the gender issue and women empowerment?
I think the way to start is to look at European history. You know, 100 years ago, many European countries were very, very poor, including my own country, Sweden. And these countries, way from poverty to being now some of the richest country in the world, would not have been possible without the active role and participation of women. It's impossible to develop a country economically, it's impossible to develop a country both politically and economically if 50% of the population is not able to take part. If 50% of the population, if half the population of a country is lost in a way, you lose 50% of the potential researchers, you lose 50% of the potential politicians, of the 50% of the entrepreneurs and so on. So ensuring equality and ensuring equal opportunities for men and women is not only about human rights, it's also about common sense. If women are not allowed the same opportunities, if women are not allowed, for example, the same rights when it comes to property as men, there will be companies that will never be started. There will be political initiatives that never will be taken. And again, if you look at many European countries, it's not a coincidence that breakthroughs in economic development often happened when women were ensured equal property rights with men, equal inheritance rights with men, and also ultimately ensuring that women were not only accorded the right to vote, but also to participate as politicians and as leaders. So I think that's what I come back to, and that's why it sends a very strong signal what the Ethiopian Prime Minister has done. It's a signal to the young women of Ethiopia that they will be growing up in a country where they have the same chances as their brothers to end up playing roles in politics, to end up playing roles in the economy, for example. So this is really something I want to emphasize, that excluding women from certain lines of work, certain lines of education and so on, it's not only infringing their human rights as individuals, but it's also a way to make sure that the country, the society as a whole loses out. I mean, I think that's my main way of looking at this challenge.
Focusing on elite women, might overshadows the ordinary women's opportunities and benefits. So how should it be balanced?
I think that's a very important point because we all know that if a woman, if a number of women are appointed as cabinet ministers, and of course the most important point is that these women, just like Ethiopia's new president, they haven't been appointed because they are women. They have been appointed because they are highly qualified individuals, because the Ethiopian Prime Minister has considered that they are the right persons for the job. Then they also happen to be women. I think that's also very important. I think that the real change in Ethiopia will come out in the countryside. I mean, the vast majority of Ethiopians live out in the countryside. They depend on agriculture and so on. So the signal that it sends that women in a village deep inside Oromia, the signal that women growing up there, you know, a little girl hearing on the radio or hearing her parents talking about it, I think the signal is important, because you have to set a benchmark, you have to set a standard. Change will have to come from the capital, and the most responsibility lies with the Prime Minister. Now he has set an example that can be followed on family level, on Kebele level, on Voreda level. And I'm sure that Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed will also follow up what happens. I don't think that he intends this to be something that only takes place in the nation's capital. But now he has shown, and of course if it's possible to have a cabinet that is equally balanced, 50% men, 50% women, I don't see why it shouldn't be possible on a Kebele and Voreda level as well. So I hope that this will be a strong encouraging sign to all the competent and qualified women that are out there. I hope it's a very strong signal to all the competent and qualified men out there, that they take the potential and the resources and the knowledge that is there with their wives and sisters seriously.
Key positions like defense force and presidential position handed to women, may it have another special meaning?
I definitely think it's a very strong signal, because if the head of state, if the president is a woman, I don't think that the effect on the ground can be overestimated. Of course, to a young Ethiopian girl, seeing that her president happens to be a woman, that many ministers are women, also in areas which were traditionally regarded as male, such as defense, that will surely make that little girl think differently about her own potential and her own future and what she can do.
Would you explain for us what the European Commission Ethiopia is doing on gender issue and women empowerment?
Well, as you know, the European Union in the period 2014 to 2020 invests 2 billion euros in Ethiopia in development cooperation, humanitarian assistance, and in other ways. And we have some activities that are specifically targeting women, issues of female health, women's human rights, such as female genital mutilation, but there is also an effort to what we call mainstream this in all activities, because there will always be specific aspects relating to women in an area such as agriculture. So when we invest in a program together with the Ethiopian authorities and together with Ethiopian civil society organizations, we always try to look for, is there a specific angle when it comes to women. One thing I think of is that the European Union has done a lot when it comes to legal aid assistance in Ethiopia, making sure that Ethiopians who have little or no means can get access to legal support if they are involved in a legal process. And here, of course, we know that women often find themselves in a particularly vulnerable situation. It can be in relation to property rights, it can be in relation to inheritance, it can be in relation to domestic violence. So in all these areas we really try to emphasize the role of women and girls, making sure that their specific concerns are taken into considerations when we design these programs. But when I say we, it's not just about we, the European Union delegation, it's we in the meaning our Ethiopian partners, whether they are in government, whether they are in civil society, and the European Union delegation. Thank you. Okay, cheers.